Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to shows online at wcbe.org. I'm John DeSando.
I'm Johnny DiLoretto. This is Cinema Classics.
It is.
Why are we talking about Aaron Sorkin?
Okay, so I was impressed with Being the Ricardos.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay,
That's
and
so long ago.
Well, because the Oscars for us are coming up. And so I thought, well, here's a guy who made enormous fame in the West Wing, all right, as a writer. And here he is directing. And in the last maybe 4 films, he has directed first-rate movies. And he has now 4 actors who have been nominated for Oscars. 3 alone on the Ricardos.
Okay.
All right, so I'm saying this guy, let's talk about him. I'm not a TV guy, but it's clear he's making the transition very easily.
Well, this is a guy.
Aaron Sorkin.
Aaron Sorkin. Yeah, I said that.
Okay, good.
Monumentally impressive talent.
Yes.
Right? He started out as a playwright.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'll be interested to know this.
I know which one.
I'm not a theater goer.
Oh, boy.
But when I was a young man and I made my first trip to New York City, my friend and I saw A Few Good Men on Broadway with Tom Hulce. And I remember being really impressed with the play then, and of course it became a great Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson movie. So, you know, reading about his early career, he just was struck by lightning when he sat down at a typewriter.
Yeah.
And that really sort of gave him a confidence that he never knew he had. He had all this language languishing inside of him, and it was like a boom. It was like lighting the fuse on a stick of dynamite. So he has this amazing playwriting career, which then he channels into screenwriting, working with Rob Reiner and William Goldman. He wrote the screenplay for The American President.
All right,
remember that?
Michael Douglas.
So, excuse me. What I guess is interesting to me about this guy is the fulcrum of his career, right? It starts with playwriting and screenwriting, movies, plays, movies. Then he gets into television with, what is it, Sports Talk? What was that show?
That's right, yeah. I'll find that in a minute.
And then, of course, The West Wing, which is big claim to fame. Then, on the other side of it, he comes out of the other side of that experience, directing films.
Yeah, and you know what he reminds me somewhat of, although he's not been directing, Tracy Letts.
Interesting.
Who also was a theater guy who just made the transition to movies and as an actor.
Yeah, for sure. And Tracy Letts is really interesting.
I mean, so
character.
I know. So you know, and let me just give you the ones in the last couple of years, starting with in 2010. The Social Network.
Wrote the screenplay for Fincher's movie, which is one of the first times I felt David Fincher kind of really nailed a movie more than just his visual prowess. He, you know, starting from the ground up with that solid screenplay. Yes. He turned out maybe his best movie.
Yeah, and then followed by that, which was one I think both you and I like, Moneyball.
Oh, he wrote Moneyball?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh,
he wrote the screenplay for Moneyball. I do too, with Brad Pitt. A different look at sports.
For sure.
And it was so brainy and so different. Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't rely on the field action.
Right. It was the behind the scenes kind of inner workings of how to make a team with minimal resources successful. And that for me marks a turning point in Brad Pitt's career, where he sort of embraces his older, sort of lived-in quality, and suddenly just becomes like the great movie star that's always sort of been lurking.
You got that. In 2015, how about this for a tough subject? Steve Jobs.
Oh yeah, I never saw that movie.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed it.
Is this the one with Michael Fassbender?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fassbender doesn't look anything like Jobs.
Right. At all.
But captured the twists and turns of that man's life, his tyrannical life, in which he affected everybody around him, supercilious, kind of toss off people, but inherently so brilliant
Yeah.
and affecting all of our lives. He caught it anyway. Yeah. But here's one that I'm not sure you would think is great, and I don't think it's great, but there's something really good about it because this is where Aaron Sorkin deals with a woman. He does a really good job in 2017. Molly's Game.
I'm glad you brought Molly's Game up because Molly's Game was a movie that, well, first of all, I hadn't realized Aaron Sorkin was behind it. That's his directorial debut, by the way.
Thank you.
That's the movie he got his toes wet directing behind the camera.
Yep.
I remember the movie came out. It was at around the year's end, and I was doing that like year-end scramble to watch everything, right? Molly's Game hadn't really been in any of the conversations about the best movies of that year. But it, we got a screener copy, and I remember putting it in and being bored to tears with it. Bored to tears, and I couldn't really finish it, because I had to move on. So I was like, okay, this is certainly never going to be in the conversation. So at that point, I guess I just wasn't holding out any hopes for Sorkin as a director. But he quickly writes himself, right? What did he do right after that?
Trial of the Chicago 7.
Right, which came out during the, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Sure, 2020.
Right in the middle of the pandemic. I remember that being a sort of bright spot movie-wise. Sacha Baron Cohen heading up a huge cast, impressive cast.
Abbie Hoffman. All the characters.
Yeah, politically astute movie.
Typically snappy dialogue.
Right.
Which is perfect for those
That's
clowns.
his hallmark, right?
Yes, right.
Some say took a little too much liberty with the reality of that story, but, the gist of it remains true. The historical thrust of that story, I think, remains true and is important. Maybe the movie a little too glossy, would you say? Or what was your impression of that?
Mine was that it was a little bit too busy and a little too flip.
Okay.
For a subject that was really serious. We had democracy on the stand here.
Right.
So,
yeah, it seemed like such a pertinent movie
but I can understand it because those guys were clowns. Anyway.
Yeah, and I also think maybe it was his attempt to sort of pull the movie off of its, historical recreation pedestal.
Yes.
That Hollywood often.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Uber serious. He did.
Yes.
He wanted, and I don't know if it actually hinders the movie, but it is an enjoyable ride, nevertheless.
Because language is really his forte.
Mm-hmm.
I picked out a line that is his favorite. You know how this always kind of indicates the character that we're talking about.
Yeah.
His favorite line.
Okay.
And it's not his own.
All right.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, it's a great line.
Catches both the humor. That moment. Can you think of a better line in a moment?
It's
This is from Jaws, everybody.
Right, and it's a beautiful. It's become a beautiful cultural kind of
yes.
Touchstone.
Yes,
that line,
yes.
That can be applied to so many different avenues and experiences in our day-to-day human existence. Right, the line transcends the movie.
Oh, it does. It does.
What's interesting about that particular line is I believe it was an ad-lib that Spielberg then worked in.
Roy Scheider gave it?
I think so, and then I think Spielberg liked it, and then they used it. It wasn't like he just did that on camera, But the reason I bring that up is because it wasn't written.
Yes.
It was an instinctive kind of reaction on Scheider's part. So it's just I find that compelling that Sorkin, who is a master of actually just putting these things on paper, loves that line, which was not actually written.
Exactly, but it's words, and that's what he loves. Something else I learned, and that's one of the reasons we do this. We don't do this for our listener.
No.
We do this for ourselves,
for
what we can learn.
The listener benefits from.
You're right. Is a term for something that he does frequently in his movies. Mm-hmm. And this term, which I have never heard before, but I think is so good.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember it. Petaconferencing.
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 That sounds dubious at best.
But listen, you know what it is? Two characters walking along the street talking.
Oh, walking and talking.
Yeah,
Great.
walking and talking.
Walking and talking.
I know, isn't that terrific?
Yeah, I used to do that all the time on the news. Okay, so for the rest of the
That's right, you
conversation.
did. Uh-oh.
Yeah, we're done. We're out of time.
Get out.
Cinema Classics is done.
Wow.
Out of time. But for more on Aaron Sorkin and some of his more recent works, head on over to WCBE.org. Listen to the podcast experience, or head on over to WCBE.org and the podcast experience page and listen to Double Take.